So welcome. This is Monika Feeney, Program Director from Missouri State School of Anesthesia, and this is our second issue of Oral History of MSU School of Anesthesia, and we are in the O'Reilly Health Sciences conference room. It's November 9th, 2016, and our special guest today is Mr. Rick Albaugh.
Hello.
So Rick, just tell us the purpose of this whole thing is to get the history of our school. And part of that is what I love about our school is the history of it. And so we're trying to get several of our alumni together to just share stories that they remember, interesting times. We've spoken with Donna Murney, and she told us the history of the seal. And so really my first question for you is tell us about how you even knew about anesthesia.
Well, actually, I kind of followed my older brother who thought that he was going to go into anesthesia, and I didn't know much about it. I actually thought that I would probably, when I was in high school, I'd go into medicine. And I found out through him that there was this thing called nurse anesthesia, and that's the path I took. I didn't have to leave home. I got to stay here in Springfield, and I went to nursing school here at St. John's, and then had the opportunity to actually start immediately. It was like within 3 to 4 weeks after graduation from nursing school that I started anesthesia school.
And so how was that? Did you do time like in labor and delivery or in the OR or something that they knew you? Because, am I understanding correctly, did they just come and ask you if you want to be?
At the point that I went into anesthesia, we made application to the school.
Okay.
Originally, whenever the school started, I think Dr. Crawford may have kind of worked with people and just asked them if they would be interested. But at that point, men were going into nursing more often, and actually probably a high percentage of us went into nursing knowing we were going to go into anesthesia.
Gotcha.
And we were even advised by our seniors not to tell anybody that we wanted to go into anesthesia because it would upset the nursing program. So we were advised not to tell anybody what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was one of those strange people, I guess, that liked nursing.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. Worked in the emergency room during school, and then had the opportunity to start anesthesia school real quick.
Okay. And so what year did you graduate from anesthesia school?
I think it was 1974.
Okay. Gotcha. And so tell me what school was like then. How long was it, and what?
It was 2 years.
Okay.
The didactics were every morning you had a 1-hour class. So we would be in class from 6 to 7, and then at 7 o'clock we were expected to be in the ORs working. And if our classes were always at St. John's, and then those of us, if we were assigned to Cox at that time, as soon as class was out, we made a mad dash across town. It was like a convoy of cars leaving. It's all the students that were assigned to Cox. We went over there to start cases at 7:30.
Mm-hmm. Now, was Cox a clinical site from the beginning? Do you know? Like
Yes.
when Dr. Crawford started it, were both?
As far as I know, Dr. Crawford, as I understood it, was the first anesthesiologist in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he took care of both hospitals from the time he got here. When I started anesthesia school, we didn't belong to St. John's, or we didn't belong to Cox. We belonged to the Anesthesia Group, the 7 doctors that owned PAS. And both sites were where we worked.
And there were 7 docs.
There were 7 docs
Okay.
at that point.
All 7. And so it's like Crawford was the first, and then he kind of trained Tillman, is my understanding. And then, okay.
And Dr. Wise came in.
And then Wise, okay. He was number 3. Okay. Gotcha.
And Dr. Hollis, I think maybe was after that, Dr. Hollis was everybody liked most everybody, but Dr. Hollis was a special personality that was, he was just bigger than life.
Uh-huh.
And I remember getting carried around the ORs part of the time. He was liked to lift weights, and he would come and pick me up and take me to the room where I was supposed to work.
Okay.
We had a few Christmas parties where I would be sitting in a chair like this, and the next thing I know, I was picked up in the chair, carried around the party. So.
Okay, that's funny. And so how often did they take students when you?
At that point, they were taking them, it was very random. The person after me started 2 weeks later, and then it was like every 2 weeks that there might be a student start, and then They might skip a month or two and start up again, and it would be every couple weeks there'd be people coming in.
And
So we had no real class per se. We were
Okay.
all a little bit different.
And-
The didactics were just taught constantly, year round. So if you started at any one point, by the time you got a year round, you had got
all that information.
all the classes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was graduation like that too? Depending on when you started, you just graduated 2 years
You
later?
just graduated 2 years later.
Okay.
There was no graduation. Sometimes the diploma was slid under the bathroom door, or you'd be changing clothes, and if I was hired as staff after I graduated, and it was just handed to me one day, and I went and put it in my locker, and I was assigned a room just like always, but this time I was a graduate.
Okay.
And we were referred to as graduates at that point.
Okay. After you graduated, you mean until you took boards?
And even then, for some reason, it seemed to be interesting. You were never really called a CRNA per se, unless you were with other CRNAs.
Uh-huh.
You were either a student or you were a graduate.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And when you took boards, that was just certain times of the year, or?
I want to think that at that point they were given, you could take your boards, maybe there were 2 times a year, maybe, that was given. We drove to St. Louis and took it at the university up there. And they were handwritten tests, and you found out it took about 6 or 8 weeks, as I remember, before the results came back.
Okay. Okay, well, is there any interesting things that you would like to share, or memories, or what a day like, when you were in school, what a day was like doing anesthesia?
Yeah, I'd say probably what I tell the students now, because I get the opportunity to teach, my first day in anesthesia was typical of what we did. I went in, I had class at 6 a.m. This is my very first day coming to the program. I had class at 6 a.m. at St. John's. It lasted about an hour. Got in my car, drove over to Cox. I was assigned to a room with Bill Kirk, who was my instructor. We had something like 6 or 7 cases that we did together that day. And unbeknownst to me, I was on call that day, so I never left that day. And
Day one?
Day one. So after all the cases were done, we stayed over, we washed all the endotracheal tubes, the oral airways, nasal airways, rebreathing tubes, bags, everything was hand washed. Went through a sterilizer unit, and then when they were out, we had to package all of them, and we had to set up everything for the next day. And then at that point, we would do whatever emergency cases at night, and we would be in OB. I would say maybe 50% of deliveries went to sleep at that point. And then, so that was my first day, and I get through that, and the next morning we go back to St. John's for 1 hour class, and then I'm sent back to Cox, and we had a room, and I think I got off at noon. I think it was a 30-hour day, my very first day. And I remember going home telling my wife that I think I've made a mistake. This can't be right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was very much clinical. There was no limitation on the number of hours that you could work by the council.
Are you ever sad you made the choice to go into anesthesia?
No.
Okay.
I think anesthesia, and what I tell the students now, this is probably one of the most exciting professions you could be in, because it's ever changing.
Mm-hmm.
The monitors that I use today, some of them didn't even exist when we started.
Mm-hmm.
The drugs we use today are different. Very few of the same drugs we even use.
And who was Bill, the program director, when you?
Dr. Wise was the program director, and
Okay.
Bill was assistant program director
Okay.
when I started.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you being part of this piece of history of the Missouri State School of Anesthesia. And again, this is Rick Albaugh, and we are in the O'Reilly Health Sciences Building, and it is November 9th, 2016, day after Election Day.
That's right.
And if there's anything else you'd like to add that you can think of, and feel,
For me, it's been quite a ride. I've been doing it now for about 44 years, and in a lot of different situations, models of practice, and I have nothing but good things to say about anesthesia.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.